for joining us today on Coastal and Progressive Rainbow Forum on Society Bites Radio. Today we will be speaking with Genevieve Hudson, the author of Boys of Alabama. I'm going to give you a little bit of history about Genevieve here and some of her awards. We are thrilled to have her here on part of the Miami Book Fair series. Author Genevieve Hudson is a Lambda Literary Award finalist with her writings Pretend We Live Here series. Her writings have also appeared in McSweeney's, Catapult, Tin House Online, Bitch Magazine, and elsewhere. She has received fellowships from the Fulbright Program, the MacDowell Colony, Calder Arts, and the Vermont Studio Center. Originally from Alabama, she now lives in Portland, Oregon. Welcome, Genevieve. We're so thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here.
And I am going to let you further outline a little bit more about your history and what brought you to writing Boys of Alabama. I heard the rumor that you lived in Amsterdam for a while. Please enlighten us about that. That was quite an experience, I bet.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Alabama. I was born and raised in the Tuscaloosa area, and I lived there until it was time to go to college. And I stayed in the Deep South for a while, and then I took off for the West Coast of the U.S. and was a little bit of a world traveler there for a while, and ended up on a Fulbright fellowship to Amsterdam, where I stayed and lived for about 6 years, which was a really wonderful experience. It's a time in my life that I still think about all the time, and it was a time that was really fruitful for my writing career in particular. And you kind of asked about this origin of Boys of Alabama, and I was actually kind of surprised that Alabama was the subject of my first novel, because for so long I hadn't been writing about Alabama in that way, and yet there was something about the place of my childhood and the place that really raised me that really felt like it had these questions and themes that I wanted to and needed to think about further. And it was almost like this was a story I had to tell before I could tell other stories. Growing up in Alabama was a complicated thing for me because I was a queer person, and Alabama felt like home, and yet I didn't feel totally at home there either. I didn't always feel completely accepted. And so there were a lot of these things about the South with the Southern masculinity and evangelicalism and just different things that felt like they were a part of my home, and yet a part that didn't feel like it resonated with me. And I needed to kind of investigate that further. And that's where Boys of Alabama came to life.
Excellent. Can you tell us from, I know some of what you wrote there rang so true. I could picture it when I was reading through the book and everything, the scenes in the South. And of course, the main character in there, Max, and one of the other ones is Pan, of course. They have a lot of interaction in different things and the different excursions they were on and different events and everything from parties to learning who each were in school and all of that. Tell us, if you can, a little bit about, did any of those experiences you wrote about there based on people that you may have met before or people that you had researched and things about them? Because it's a fascinating, and for our people who haven't read the book yet and who I'm hoping are going to read it, Pan is male, and so is Max. Of course, Max comes from Germany, and both of them are having issues with their apparently their sexual identity. So I'll just leave it that there, but you can elaborate more and some more of the characters that you developed in there too. And there are other characters, a lot of other characters, of course, in the book too as well. But can tell us a little bit about what led you to this type of writing.
It's interesting because I think my experience of writing and kind of creating characters is there might be one person from my real life that kind of the seed of the character kind of starts from, but I really think that the characters like Pan and Max are kind of composites of a lot of different people that I've come into contact with or known or, had some sort of experience with in my life. The interesting thing about Pan and Max is, Pan is, like you said, Max is from Germany. He's an outsider coming into Alabama. And Pan is, he's born and raised in Alabama. And yet he's not what you would think of as a traditional boy from Alabama. He is.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. He's a kind of a goth kid who is very outspoken, who dresses in women's clothing, who is, really goes against the cultural wars of in fashion and style and way of being that his peers and the boys he grew up with are like. And that was actually modeled off of a very good friend of mine that I had growing up, even though this person is very different from Pan. And, I'm not in no way telling his story, but there was a similarity of like seeing this person who really formed his identity in opposition to what he saw around him and was so singular and was so who he was. What I noticed kind of maybe surprisingly is that the kind of like the way that he was received by his peers and by these kind of boys that are like more masculine and traditional and conservative was actually quite like there was a lot of acceptance there. And I think some of that came from the fact that if we look at Pan he grew up with these guys. He's kind of like their freak or something, or he's their kind of weirdo. He's somebody who they have this sense of connection and bond with that might be different if this was somebody that was coming in from New York City or coming in from somewhere else. They accept him in this way because they have a sense of like love and connection with him. And that's something that I really experienced in the South, was this feeling of like, maybe there's some unease about people being different, but also there's a lot of acceptance for the people that you grow up around and the people that are in your community. There's a sort of like overlooking or allowing of that kind of difference as long as it's in a certain context.
Right, I could picture that in there in some of the ways, and I think you summarized it very well there in saying that because he grew up with them, that is the reason they accepted him. So it's much more easy for them to accept him in that fashion. He had some really incredible experiences there. So if you think that you can, without divulging too much of the book, okay, but getting interest built up here, tell a little bit of your favorite parts of the story in there, because there are so many different scenes that I wouldn't know where to begin in explaining them. And anyway, I'll let you pick out some, and then I may ask you about some others here too. Okay.
Yeah, one scene that really stays with me is one of the first scenes I ever wrote in the book. And that was this scene where Max has, one of the plot lines that's in the back line of this book is that, Max has just come from Germany to Alabama. And he's joined the football team. And one of the fathers of one of his, fellow football players is running for governor. And he has a lot of religious language and that he's bringing into his campaign, and he's pretty divisive. And Max is pretty captivated by him. A lot of people are captivated by him because he's a very charismatic character. And so Max goes to a campaign for this governor, would-be governor. And then afterwards, he goes to a field party with some of these boys from the football team. And there is something about, these scenes that are set a little bit on the outskirts of town and these rural areas at night where I was hoping at least to really show this feeling of like what it's like to kind of like be young and be in this place that's like kind of so wild, and the landscape is just so alive and so vivid, and you're kind of like exploring yourself in this place that itself is so like kind of fertile and lush and mysterious and a little dark. And so I think that scene was one that I had a lot of fun writing. So like it's Max's first time really going to a field party. He sees Pan there. There's a lot of questions about, how people do things in this new culture, just like the small idiosyncrasies of conversation and friendship and how you bond with like new people. And so those were interesting scenes for me to write with the football boys and Max kind of making his way into that new scene and trying to understand like what he believed, what was true for him, like what resonated with him, and then also being pulled in this other way by Pan, who is such a different dynamic character that intrigued him in a bunch of different ways.
Right, and I remember one of the scenes in there too. It's a little later in the book, I believe, where they were another one of their field parties, I guess you would call them, and he was talking about the mosquitoes and everything, and the guy racing down the road at 110 mile an hour and so forth. And I could picture that. I can picture that with life. I didn't grow up in the South. I grew up in the Midwest, but I can picture as people that I knew in the Midwest that were like that, and similar philosophies and things like this, and so it was easy to picture, and that's a thing I think it's a very compliment for your writing. You obviously either lived through part of it or did a lot of research or knew people who lived through part of it. So that was great. That was great reading and great.
Thank you.
And it was so vivid in the way you did write. Yes. And I remember writing about the mosquitoes and the smell and the scents in the air and things like this. It was fascinating reading. When this gets kind of on the same subject, but a little bit off here, I cannot recall if I read in your book or not here, but I know that in Alabama is still one of the states that has conversion therapy that's still allowed there, and unfortunately Florida is too. And that has been an absolute horror that's been promulgated on the LGBTQ plus community. And it was, I was trying to think, did any of that come into your thinking? Because I know they have rural areas of Alabama where they have these conversion therapy from the evangelicals. They have these conversion therapy camps that these religious groups take money for to claim that they're going to convert the children, pray away the gay or something like that. And I know that they also have them in Florida. And I've worked very, very hard over the years and trying to support groups to get rid of this type of thing, because the damage it does to young people is just incredible.
Yeah.
So did any of that figure into your writings here when you were doing any of this, or was that in the background in your mind or anything when you were doing this? Or I was trying to look again for what some of these thought processes were from the characters that you wrote in there. I know the football team was there, of course, and you talked about the campaign and so forth. What else would you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I thank you for bringing that up about conversion therapy, because I think it's, I think to some people that can seem so just like a horror of the past, or something that, it doesn't have a place in modern day, in modern day culture. And yet, we know that is still something that a lot of people are engaging in, and they're, where people are being traumatized every day by conversion therapy and being told that who they are and their identity is something that is so wrong that it needs to be kind of like exercised out of them. And the impacts, are lifelong for a lot of people who experience that. And, while my book didn't explicitly engage in, someone going to conversion therapy or that kind of being talked about, I think